we on? Oh, we're supposed to be live. We're supposed to be live. I think I pressed it. Good evening, one and all. All in one. I hope we're coming through nice, loud, clear. I'm bouncing. And are you bouncing? Well, you're bouncing. Now make some sound.
Okay, let's see if I'm bouncing.
Well, it looks good to me, my end. But hopefully you guys can hear us. And
there's
I've got super blurry tonight.
Munzer, hello everybody. Yes,
hey.
It's super blurry tonight.
I've made such a mess of my office.
Internet blows him.
I've made such a mess of my office. I was like, I'm going to use that AI denoising thing. So the flickering of my chair and my shimmy, I apologize already. I'm also a little bit tired, and I'm propping it up with some coffee. And I've already demonstrated I'm a little bit manic this evening. So, yeah, enjoy the show.
This is something that we're sharing because I've been, as you've probably noticed, I've been fatigued for like 2 or 3 weeks now. And so I took some coffee before the stream. I don't feel more awake, but I definitely feel more manic.
Yes, coffee, making Mikey and Yan do crazy things faster, badly. There's a proper saying with that, but I can't remember.
So before we begin, some exciting news. Godot 4 is going into the feature freeze, or the Godot 4 Alpha is going to feature freeze on the 4th, which is in 3 days' time as of this recording.
Nice.
Then they're going to start working towards releasing Beta 1 in early September. They are pointing out, and I'm going to reiterate, Beta 1 is not stable. We won't be doing the Godot course yet because we're going to expect it to crash a lot. They're saying it's not production ready, yada, yada, bugs.
Okay, so to answer the type of coffee it is, I think this is Colombian. I'm not sure. It said it was strength 12. It is rather bitter and deeply roasted. And yeah, it's quite strong.
So where it's from will give you the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And how long it's roasted for will give you the strength.
Yes.
And some regions have coffees that really don't respond well to high roast, and some regions have very poor low roast. So African coffees tend to be very delicate in flavor at a low roast. But if you give them a high roast, thinking they're stronger, they taste like sawdust.
I've had sawdust coffee. It's not nice. In fact, I've had coffee.
Yes, I've been to that coffee shop too.
So it was years ago. It was when I first got into coffee. I'm not really a coffee connoisseur, but I started drinking coffee, and I was like, okay, I want to experiment. I want to see what's out there, etc. And I bought like the cheap stuff, the really, really cheap cafetiere coffee, and I bought the expensive stuff. I really wanted to know if there was an actual difference between the two. I didn't want to go and spend 3 times as much if I couldn't taste the difference. That's a genuine thing. Some people don't.
Which is fair.
Yeah. And the best way of describing the difference between them, like £6 a packet versus £2 a packet, so three times difference in price. It definitely tasted, the cheap stuff, as if you'd swept the floor where the good stuff was made and put that in the packet. It was, as you say, dusty, and it wasn't nice at all.
Well, people do go to coffee farms and buy the beans, and the big companies get first dibs.
Maybe it was literally the sweepings, what was left.
So as you could tell, today's conversation is going to be about zombie games.
And coffee.
Do you like my segue, Mikey? Was that seamless? Did I do well? Am I professional yet?
Perfect.
Do we have any other announcements you want to make before we start talking?
So I don't mind repeating myself on a weekly basis if we're talking about what's going on in the background, etc. I think I mentioned this on last week's stream, but it was only brief because we were focused on Blender and stuff. So yes, so we have in the works the new updated version of our Geometry Nodes course written by Arendelle, and he will be working on that. He's working on it at the moment, and it's going to be released for free for those who already have the existing Geometry Nodes course. So that version was written in 2.93, and Geometry Nodes has changed massively. The fundamentals are still the same, and if you follow along with the course, there's a conversion lecture as well. But there's going to be a brand new beginner's introduction to Geometry Nodes, same overall scene, but ultimately it's going to be in the new version of Geometry Nodes. And there's more. So he's also going to put together an intermediate course. For those who want to take that beginner knowledge even further, he will be putting together an intermediate course. That won't be released as quickly as the beginner course, but we're hoping to get the beginner course to you sometime towards the end of this month, beginning of September.
That's very exciting. I didn't know about that. That's awesome.
I know, right?
Yeah.
If I was a
I'm
poker
pleasantly
player,
surprised.
here's my full house.
No, that's very
Yeah.
cool.
So that's really
to
exciting
reiterate what we
as
were talking
well.
about before we went on to coffees. Coffee is delicious. No, I mean it is, but no. Godot 4 going into beta 1, hopefully first week of September. Will not be stable. Course won't be started yet. Yes, I will be playing with it more, doing bug reports and all the rest of it. But don't expect the course to come out September 2nd.
How about September 3rd?
Like, we're waiting to it, Mikey. You're the director of the company. You're undermining.
Hi ho!
When it's stable, we will start actually recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I don't want to start recording and say, in this video, we're going to learn why you shouldn't have taken this course yet. So,
yeah, we were talking about the potential cul-de-sac problem where you often with a new bit of software, you have to do something and there you go around the houses, the cul-de-sac problem, rather than just straight to it. And then an update comes out that makes 5 lectures. And you're like, oh. And I have this still, I've recorded stuff in Blender 3.1. 3.2 added a node, which meant that 2 lectures were pointless. I was like, ugh.
I've had that before. I'm giggling, by the way, because of the phrase cul-de-sac.
Yes.
Which
Translate
is a French
it for
phrase.
us. Yes.
Yes, it means, how can I put this in a way that won't demonetize us? Rear end of a bag.
We're not monetized, so fire away.
Bag end, if
Bag
you like.
I thought it was arse of the sack.
Thanks. I'm glad, Roderick. I'm glad you have that kind of epic level of patience. All right. So rather than just play a game and have you guys watch us, which is fun, but maybe not useful, we thought we'd go and take a sort of step back and look at a common mechanic between different games, ones that do it well, ones that do it badly, and talk about what we think. Well, maybe not actually a mechanic. Is it a mechanic? Is it a genre? Is it a theme? That's part of what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
And talk about zombies in video games.
So,
and I have a checkered history with them. And what about you, Mikey? Do you like zombie games?
Long-term viewers of the channel will know that I do enjoy a good zombie game. And I've actually played quite a few different types of game, different genres of game, whether it's first-person shooter or more third-person controlled. So there are plenty of different options when it comes to this. And Jan asked an absolutely fantastic question that really did pickle my brain. And now I've got a bit more coffee in me. I might be able to answer it even worse. What was your question earlier on? We were talking about what is a zombie game, and you were asking about, what was the game? Plants versus Zombies?
So, yes, you were saying that that it's a genre. And I said, well, it used to be a tower defense thing, like Plants versus Zombies. Like, is Plants versus Zombies not a zombie game? And you just went,
you broke my brain. You literally.
Now, to me, it's an obvious answer. Yes, it is. It has zombies in it. But you're like, it's not a zombie game. It doesn't feel like it.
It's weird. So this is a categorization problem. Us being humans, we like putting things in their specific pigeonhole. And to me, a zombie game doesn't just have zombies in it. It has to sort of like put a certain number of ticks in boxes in order to be a zombie game. And just because you're putting stuff and blocking zombies going in, it didn't feel like a zombie game to me. And perhaps that's because I played more hardcore versions.
I mean, you and I played Left 4 Dead 2 the other week.
Yes.
Very badly, I want to point out.
It was lots of fun.
I got grumpy at Mikey because I wasn't communicating properly, which Mikey was like, you're the one wandering off. Like, why aren't you next to me? Because you're wandering off. You're running into a fire with a knife, and I'm back here. But that's a survival sort of first-person shooter, right? I've played a great deal of, well, okay, let me go back a little bit and explain my thing with zombie games. I play games with zombies that I enjoy. Yeah. I've played a decent amounts of 7 Days to Die, and although I didn't get into it for the longest time till I saw it on Neeb's gaming channel, just wasn't interested. Then I got into it, mostly from a sort of building and crafting, exploring kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But that game and Left 4 Dead 2 have very little in common. Generally, if I see zombies in a game, I'm not interested because it feels like such a cliche. Like it feels like if this isn't a fair criticism, but it's an honest, like how I'm reacting. It's an honest criticism myself. It feels like it's lazy, right? Oh, we'll just put zombies in it. People love zombies.
But there are so many different types of zombies. So there are a couple of games I definitely have not played. So Dying Light is at its heart a parkour game, and they've got zombies in, and I think they balance the difficulty with that reasonably well. I do think when you point, and this is the same for a lot of games, when you're kind of in a survival mechanic and you point a double-barreled shotgun at the face of something, and it requires 5 of those, that's a bit doesn't feel right.
I mean, it gets down to how gamey, in quotation marks, do you want it to feel?
Yes, exactly. Roderick raises a great point there. It's why they're called something different. If you take so when I first watched World War Z, and the zombies in that were completely different. So zombies characteristically are these slow moving things, and when you move them into games, they're slow moving.
We say characteristically, they sort of get reinvented every 5 years.
Yeah, but they're like so fast.
Day of the Dead was a reinvention, and that was the slow zombie.
So I can certainly see there are a lot of sort of variations that come in. I mean, it's odd when you see like these huge walking hulks, and when you shoot them, they explode or they just soak up damage. They're your typical tank of a game. But it really opened my eyes when I saw World War Z and then the game as well, where pretty much all the zombies run at you. They sprint. It changes the whole dynamic. So when you're playing...
the first time I saw that in popular culture would have been I Am Legend.
Yes.
Which really reimagined, because we'd had like a long time of the shambling zombie, like the Romero classic Day of the Dead zombie, right up until Shaun of the Dead. And then I Am Legend comes out and suddenly they're very fast. And then you start seeing sprinting, screaming zombies everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because before then they were always like vampires or monsters or werewolves that moved at that speed. Like it's the whole point of zombies, where they were a tower defense problem.
There was a horde problem. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely enjoy the genre as a whole. I enjoy space, and I enjoy zombies, and I enjoy all games. But you gravitate towards certain styles of game. And certainly some of the best games that I played story-wise have been the Telltale games, which had The Walking Dead. Telltale?
I didn't play the Walking Dead one. I enjoyed The Wolf Among Us. I played it exactly once.
Yep.
And then didn't need to play it again. I started playing the Borderlands one. I bought it on episode 1 and had access to all the other episodes. By the time I got to episode 4, I'd lost all interest in it and stopped playing. So it's interesting. Like sometimes those games are really compelling, and sometimes it's like, eh.
Yeah, with the Telltale games, they're like a multiple choice game. If you've not played them, and you determine the story based upon your actions, and as unfortunately most games, it's the illusion of choice rather than real choice. You do cut out story arcs and story paths, and later on, and I think this is a trick that they do, they leave your choice impact to much later in the game, so that when that thing happens, either with or without a character that you've said, no, we don't want you part of our group anymore, it's easier to contain the consequences of that to that one particular scene later on in the act, so to speak, rather
they
than
also
have it
do a lot of
propagate.
smoke and mirrors. Like they give you the impression that choices matter when they actually don't. Yes. Which is fine. Like that works great, and it's a great money saving technique. Like just write, Mikey will remember that, and actually have the same path either way, because you don't really have the money to do hundreds of thousands of lines of dialogue for every possible choice. But once the player realizes that, the magic's gone.
Yes, I segueing from zombies to something like Deus Ex. As soon as I got to the end and realized that all of my choices actually didn't matter, and it's the 3 or 4 you make at the very end of the game, that really started, it undermines the whole premise of the game at that point, where it's saying your choices matter.
If the experience is your choices are everything, and then you find out they're not, you stop playing the game.
Yes.
right? In Deus Ex, if you the experience is you have complete freedom, and then it turns out no, there's only 3 possible paths, then the magic's gone. And I guess that's a good thing to ask with zombies, because one of the interesting things about zombies is, I'm going to get a little academic here. What zombies represent has changed over time. Like, they were originally the big shambling socialist mass, right? The faceless proletarian horde coming for you. And then they shifted. I mean, originally they were the colonialist or fear of slaves, but they sort of revolved into this spiky, screaming, leaping demon thing. So I guess if you're making a game and you want to put zombies in it, the first question you want to ask yourself is why? Why do you want to put zombies in it? Like, what's special about the zombies for you? What's the experience? What do the zombies represent? Especially when you're using mythological creatures, you can play with a little bit of symbolism here. Like, the mythological creatures for me are most interesting when they're not just themselves. They represent an impulse, or they represent a fear. Dragon is a great example, right? A dragon can be the forces of nature that you can't possibly stop, or they could be like the greed and avarice of man. But if it's just big scaly lizard, I don't really care.
Mad Tucker, want to see the consequences you made in episode 2? Tune in to episode 4.
I mean, yes, it does feel like a marketing gimmick.
Yes.
So that being said, so we've both played a bunch of zombie games. We haven't played the same zombie games. Like, some of them we have played together. Like, we played Left 4 Dead together. We've both separately played 7 Days to Die, which is a really bad game to sort of pick up and play just for 5 minutes, which is why we didn't play it longer. I mean, I've played it longer. You've played it longer, but not together.
Yeah.
You've played State of Decay.
Yep. That was a real. That's probably one of the things that triggered me to sort of try some zombie games. It was on a Steam sale. It was like £5. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. But then suddenly, where you're building up your community, and it's a community building game essentially, and then on one trek home later on in the game, like maybe 4 to 5 hours in, you end up across a big horde, and one of your main characters just gets ripped in two. It's like, oh, well,
Yep.
And that permadeath thing, the consequences of it, is something I really enjoy in games. I really enjoy like playing Minecraft on hardcore mode. It adds a dimension to the game, makes you. It's consequences. It makes you more thoughtful.
I'm kind
about
of
your
amazed you've
actions.
not played more roguelikes, to be honest. Because I mean, Noita's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Randomized start, which as you play, you can unlock more and more options for the start. But once you die, that run through is done. Like, we're going to reset the world and the character.
So it's interesting. The genre kind of pulls me in. One thing you mentioned about different types of zombies. A game that I got into, it was just a punt. Let's see what this is like. Project Zomboid. It doesn't look much graphically, and it's like a hardcore survival. A scratch can kill you, that sort of thing. If you leave it untreated, it can kill you through normal infection. You don't just become a zombie. And in that, the zombies are all the same. Some of them go slow, and some of them stagger a bit more quickly. But pretty much they are all the same, and you can get hordes of.
There's no special class.
There's no special class of zombie, and I think that's really interesting because the game really isn't a zombie game as much as it's a will you survive game, and the zombies themselves
I
keep the flow going.
disagree. I think that's more of a zombie game than something that puts in classes of zombies to keep it interesting.
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
because something like Left 4 Dead, for example, has the base zombies that you see a lot of, and then you've got the ones with the big tongues, the smokers, and you've got the screamers and the boomers, and I mean, I'm thinking more of Left 4 Dead 2 here, the witch. But they've all got their own behavior. There's specials that are put in specifically to raise the stakes in this moment. And if you're doing too well in Left 4 Dead 2, they'll throw more of them in, and
they'll try and balance the difficulty. Yeah,
right. But to me, that's a bit like putting in a mid boss or a boss into the game, right? That makes it a bit more Devil May Cry than a zombie game for me. But that's only because I'm thinking of zombies as like the old like Day of the Dead. They're all a shambling horde, and the problem is you don't have the ammunition to kill all of them. Like, eventually you're going to fall down.
Yeah, I mean, there are great consequences in Zomboid because it's more of I think you'd call it a simulation game. Because if you don't
Right.
drink, you're going to die. If you don't eat, you're going to die. If you don't stay warm, you're going to die. And there is a winter that comes. So you start in the springtime, and as the year progresses, there is a point at which you are going to freeze to death if you've not sorted yourself out. And things like the electricity and the water go off. I think the water by default goes off after 6 months. At that point, you've got to scavenge or have built something to collect water. And yes, the ever present zombie threat. None of the there is one instance in the game. It's called the helicopter. It's the bane of all new players. Sometime between day 10 and day 30, a helicopter finds you. It doesn't pick you up and rescue you, but it does attract all the zombies to exactly where you are. And it's a random event between those two times. It's like, okay.
That's kind of it.
But that's to progress to put an emphasis on the game going forward. But it is very, very challenging. I don't think there is a difficulty slider. I think you can change the difficulty by changing like the range at which they can hear you or see you or smell you. So that's the other thing. If you don't wash, they can smell you as well. I don't know if it has wind.
I mean, that's why I shower every day.
To protect yourself from zombies. I'm going to try that on the kids. How much will therapy cost later on?
Dad of the year. My kids have excellent hygiene, but now can't sleep.
Yes, they keep hearing groaning.
I mean, I think it's kind of interesting because zombies, especially after The Walking Dead came out, did become like the go-to genre for a while. Like if you had a game, you had to put zombies in it.
Would you say they took
Fortnite
over?
Started off as a zombie game.
Yes, it was a defense game, wasn't it? Would you say that zombies pretty much took over from where vampires were, sort of like the decade before?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I don't remember the same kind of. I think the last real surge of all these games having the same DNA before zombies that I can remember would be first-person shooters.
Yeah.
I mean, it started kind of with Wolfenstein 3D, the original. Which is not technically a 3D game. It's a 2.5D, and that led a bit of interest. And there were a few clones for different other companies, and there was Rise of the Triads and a few other games.
Yeah.
And then Doom came out. And when Doom came out, it led to the traditional media hysteria of, this demonic game is teaching kids to be Satan worshippers. I'm like, they're shooting the zombies.
Yeah.
But suddenly everyone was making it first-person shooters. Like it was the only viable product. You had to be making them. And that lasted a good 5 or 10 years. Like it was the go-to genre. And then, 10 is probably a bit long. And then they sort of petered out. And suddenly there was a 5-year period where everything had to have zombies in it. Like just had to.
Yeah. I mean, even if it wasn't the main game, there'd be like zombie mode that you could turn on.
Yeah, I remember I picked up Saints Row 3. Love Saints Row 3. Really stupid game. Saints Row 3 is my favorite GTA game, by far. There's a zombie mode in it.
Have you played the zombie mode? Or is it just there?
It's just there. It's not that interesting, but it's in there.
Yeah. I mean, zombies are one of those really weird things. Do you think they prey on sort of like our concerns as a being? The dead coming back.
Yeah, I mean, like most of the best monsters, they're based on a fear. Like the best one I heard is that zombies are the fear of consumerism, right? The sort of restless, unstopping proletariat horde that you just can't possibly deal with.
Right.
But they can stand for whatever you want them to stand for. In the same way that vampires, when Bram Stoker's writing about vampires, they're really about syphilis and power, right? That's what Dracula is. He's a stand-in for social ills. When they just become Bond villain, they're a little less interesting.
That's very true. So one of the things that I've discovered when sort of like playing all of these different genres is some games the zombies that are there are a threat, but never scary as such. Like in Dying Light, at nighttime it can feel a little bit more scary if you turn a corner and one's in front of you, but that's more of a jump scare than, oh, that doesn't feel good. But interestingly, so 7 Days to Die, this is when I played it quite a bit, maybe a year and a half ago. So it's not as fleshed out or as beautiful as it is these days. And I remember just going through my first night, and 7 Days to Die is one of those games that has pitch black at night. There's very little, if any, light. And I was sat there in a house, and there was just this groaning and moaning. But I was playing the game in the dark, and just the screen in this pitch black, and I didn't know whether that zombie was in the house because I hadn't checked around, and I know that they can creep in and knock things through and climb over certain objects. I was like, I wasn't scared as such, but I wasn't feeling comfortable. I'll put it that way. I felt on edge, uneasy.
I mean, okay, zombies don't have to be scary. Like, they can be overwhelming, but a zombie game isn't necessarily a horror game. A great example of a failed horror game would be like Fear 3, which tries to be really scary, but gives you all the ammunition and weaponry in the world. You have far too much agency to be scared. In the same way that the first time I played Doom, the original Doom, I don't particularly like horror movies and horror games. I don't enjoy being scared. I don't go out of my way to seek the experience. But running down a darkened corridor with zombies trying to leap at me while I'm carrying a chainsaw isn't scary. It's immense fun, but it's not scary.
Yeah, it's interesting. So circling back, one of the things we were talking about before the stream is just the zombie thing a theme rather than a specific game type. And I think...
Or is it a style? Because a theme would imply like you're sharing the same kind of values behind it. But we've just pointed out that sometimes zombies can be like a really terrifying, hide-in-the-dark, snarling sound, and suddenly there's thousands of leaping fast things that you can't deal with. Or they could be the slow, shambling thing off in the distance, the Plants vs. Zombies experience.
Yeah.
Where I've got a plan, I'm going to watch them wreck themselves against my whatever kind of plant this is.
Oh, look, one of them's wearing a cone.
Yep.
Awesome.
Which is something you find out a lot, right? Like these terms like genre and theme, after a while, it's best to leave them fuzzy. Like they're really most useful in a sort of a pitching or a marketing meeting than they are in a design process.
I'm afraid of Fear. Do you mean Fear the game by any chance?
No, he didn't capitalize it. Is there a game where the player is the zombie? I've seen a couple of indie games where they are. I was actually talking to Mikey about this? A survival game, a zombie survival game where you are a zombie who has to survive.
That'd be interesting. So on that sort of theme, one of the games it came to the Game Pass recently was Carrion. So you actually play as this mass of and you devour humans in this base, and you eventually escape. And it was a very interesting. I loved it. It was a completely different style. And once you got the hang of it, I mean, you were a monster. You'd come into the room as this blob, extend a tentacle, and just go hum and get bigger. I really I recommend that game for anybody. It's an interesting physics-based game as well, because your body isn't really a body. It's like a...
No, I've seen it.
You're like an octopus.
You're the blob.
Yeah.
I think the best zombie game I ever played was not a zombie game. It was Nether, which kind of failed. Which is a pity, because it was a post-apocalyptic multiplayer game with servers where you could hunt each other and all the rest of it, find weapons, find things, all the rest of it. But the zombies were replaced with these alien demon-looking things made of shadows.
Okay.
And some of them were shambling, and some of them were very sensitive to noise. Right. So it was the same kind of like setup as a zombie, but you've removed that familiarity, and that was really tense. Because if I see a floaty shadow thing over there, I know it's a threat. I don't know what kind of threat. Whereas if I see like, oh, that's a boomer, like kill it from a distance.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So that actually is a great gameplay discussion when you have a certain selection of zombies that you're going to use. So taking State of Decay. So they've got their big blob, the big tank that soaks up damage. You got your standard zombies that walk and run. They do actually approach you
Mhm.
quite quickly. Then you've got like a crawler, and it's one of those ones that once you get near you, if you're on foot, you better be good with a gun or be able to get out of the way quickly. It runs and leaps. And it's interesting that you employ different tactics. And if you listen carefully, there's all sorts of game cues to make sure that you are aware of what's around you. I mean, even
Because
to
that's
the
the
extent it appears
experience,
on the
right?
mini map.
It's not like Left 4 Dead where okay, you can go off and get supplies, but every 7 days or whatever you set it to on the server, there's going to be a horde. You know the horde is coming. You should probably make a base. That base should probably be secure. The problem is you get to a point where your base is secure. They can't possibly get to you. So they have to keep raising the difficulty, raising the more and more powerful zombies, but you know they're coming. So when you've played it a few times, you know eventually there's going to be those soldiers with a little bomb on them. Don't shoot the bomb if they're close to the base. Okay.
I
Um,
remember some of my first experiences of that game. I made it to the 7th day and I was like, brilliant. I was ready. I'd actually set up a little platform trap that you can set up where there's like a gap and they can fall down as they try to attack you. And I thought, I'll try this. And the horde came. 2 zombies. And obviously, I know the horde gears to how advanced you are as well as how
it
far you
also
are
the
in the
first
game.
horde is always much easier.
Yeah. I was like, 2 zombies isn't a horde. Give me like 5 would have been a challenge. 5 would have
Yep.
actually felt like
But
a
that
mini
game's
horde.
interesting because you can have times where there's like 3 zombies show up.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then you can have times where 2 wandering hordes show up just before the horde shows up. And suddenly you don't have any ammo left. Like, oh, thanks. It doesn't help that, I mean, they're having to constantly rebalance the game and it's still an
Yeah.
alpha, so technically. But
Yeah,
like,
that's difficult.
there's a couple of builds you can make that radically simplify the game. Like, I found one where it's kind of geared towards the mid to late game, but a brawler build called the Unkillable Brawler, where you just keep healing every time you hit them. So you're constantly stunning them and punching them down. And at that point, it's easier not to have a base.
Yeah.
Because come Horde night, you can just run around.
And then they disperse. I remember seeing some tactics like you just dig down, because before the pathfinding enabled them to go down, you could just have an underground base and that would solve the horde problem and they'd disperse later on.
But once you want to say, that's the thing, right? Is
But that's cheesing the game at that point.
If you have a situation where the idea is there are zombies coming against the door, can you fortify it? Eventually, like a lot of survival games, your base is simply secure.
Yeah.
Do you end the game? Like, or do you keep redoing the balance? Like, if there's enough fortifications and traps and all the rest of it that they physically cannot do the damage they need to do, there's no threat. So they add in new types of zombies. There's mods you can get. Obviously, they change the pathfinding. They do everything they can to stop you getting to that point. Because once you get to that point, what do you do next?
It's kind of game over at that point. It becomes a high score game instead of an actual objective game. I remember years ago, must have been like iPhone 4, way back. There was a game where you had to land planes on a runway, and you had like your jumbo jets, you had your light flights, and they each had their own runway, and you could have like a helicopter. And then later on, it brought in a fast jet, which were twice as fast as the normal jumbo jets landing. But I remember once I'd actually internalized the game scaled to a point, but then it couldn't just put more on the screen because then it just becomes impossible to win. But it basically the difficulty plateaued, and I got to, I think it was around 300 points where it did that. And then I just kept playing throughout the afternoon with the radio on, and then I was like at 1,000. I'm like, that's it. Last time I ever touched that game, because I'd realized at that point I'd mastered it. There was
nothing left to do.
And I wasn't going to try.
This is a problem I've found a lot with survival games, whether it's Minecraft, admittedly, since I played just after they added, I stopped playing just after they added the end. So I know there is a boss you can beat. So if you want to, you can finish that game. But things like Ark, which some of you will know I've got way too many hundreds of thousands of hours in. Arc for me has a real problem, which is the beginning of the game is fascinating. Finding a spot,
Yeah.
trying to survive, deeply frustrating because raptors everywhere. But you finally get this tiny little hovel, and you start building it out, and pushing it back, and like making this part yours. And then the joy of securing it. And then you look around one day and it's secure. And you've got flyers, and you've got a breeding pen. So if you lose a dinosaur, you can make another one.
Yeah.
And
Where do you go from there?
What should we play now?
I mean, if you took it as an actual sort of a role-playing game, once you've set up and secured your area, that's how you might actually live the rest of your life out.
I mean, it does
Right?
actually have bosses that you're supposed to grind stuff for to go and beat.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So
I've done that on one map with some friends, and it was fun. But yeah.
Yes. So I've tried playing Ark. How many times? Quite a few. And I've tried the different Ragnarok, I think, was one of the islands or maps that I actually really enjoyed.
Ragnarok's a great map.
So Jan and I were playing, and when you're playing not on a server, you're actually tethered to each other.
Yep.
And I inadvertently did I drag you towards the Triceratops, or did you drag me towards the?
I'm sorry, inadvertently. Triceratops? No. Mikey, you see that thing over there? The three of them. Those are Allosauruses. They always hunt in packs, and they're very. What are you doing? Boing!
I'm hunting.
And then later, a Brontosaurus got mad at me, so I ran away, not realizing Mikey was on top of a cliff, and dragged him off the cliff. Ark is a lot of fun with friends. My favorite way to play Ark is on a private server with a small number of friends having adventures. Like for me, that's a great game. Find dinosaurs, tame dinosaurs, go, find ruins.
Yeah,
but there comes a point where you've kind of done it.
I would genuinely say the only time I've had fun playing Ark is with other people. I've not found
solo.
It
I find it
all.
less interesting. You can. I mean, if you're someone who wants to go to creative mode and build incredible structures, go for it. But I've also played with people who simply cannot play these games because they feel like it's got no direction. I've got a good friend, Matt, who the only type of open world survival game he likes is one where there's an event where one has to attack the other every 7 days.
Right.
Or a game like Rust, which is a great example, where the maps reset every 2 weeks. So the idea is, can you conquer everyone else's bases in that time? I don't enjoy that. I'm not a big PvP player. I like building. I like exploring. I was going to say making stuff, but that's building. Like I like the social aspect of it.
So
I like
one of the things I struggle with any player versus player is there's usually some sort of asymmetry in terms of skill. And if the game is such that if you don't put in 40 hours a week, you will always lose, and there's not much more to the game other than that competitive nature, then you're kind of you're going to lose, and you're probably not going to play anyway. A great example of a game that has a very high ceiling is something like Quake Champions, or a lot of the CS:GO, etc. Those all have quite a high
speedrunner,
high ceiling. Yep. Oh, speedrunners.
Remember when we were playing speedrunners and we felt like we're getting pretty good. Like we were going through the map and we were playing with our friends, and it was like, yeah, we got this. I went online to play with people.
Yeah.
Like I didn't stand a chance. I didn't make it like a third of the way around the course.
Speedrunners an I still love the game. But it's one of those games that you can see if someone really, really did like it, they could get pixel perfect at the game. And that's what we were experiencing when both of us went online. It was basically you're
murder.
You're playing against people who know exactly the timings to press every button.
The skill divide was so big, I wasn't letting them enjoy the game because I was no challenge.
And vice versa. You couldn't enjoy the game because how have you done that?
There was no game.
So it's amazing. And balance is difficult.
That was an interesting digression from zombies. Balance is very difficult. And putting a meaning into a sandbox game is difficult because by definition, they're not supposed to have a linear journey. Like I don't mind playing a sandbox game until I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to it later. Like I keep coming back to Ark every few months. I love Ark, but I get bored of it. Like, and that's fine. That's, you know, what it's for.
Yeah, a
I don't know
sandbox
that I would
game.
enjoy Ark as much if it had zombies.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Tame zombies, breed zombies. Like technically,
Well,
you
in
could
one of the Walking
do
Dead
it.
seasons, they pretty much kind of did that.
Yeah, and there was that woman with the swingy blade who had 2 of them on a leash.
That was an interesting bit when she came in. Yeah. So with the survival things like Ark, etc., I don't think they would work quite as well with zombies.
I mean, 7 Days to Die is exactly that.
It's interesting though. But I'd definitely rather play that. And maybe it's I don't like dinosaurs. It could very well be that I don't find them very interesting as
I don't like
as a theme.
zombies. I quite like 7 Days to Die. I mean, I get bored of it after a while. Yada yada yada.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's just why would there be zombies instead of dinosaurs? Like, part of the magic of Ark is turning around and seeing movement and trying to develop the expertise to know, is that dangerous? Right? Like, the first time a Tyrannosaurus Rex comes around the corner that you weren't expecting is quite a moment.
I must admit that Ark is one of the most beautiful games that I've played. Some of the way the islands are crafted, I'm like, I want to move here.
Except the font. I hate the big glowy bubbly font everywhere. Like, it's just, I hate it.
Who designed that?
Like, okay, it's legible. I will grant you it is legible.
Yeah,
I
you
can't
can
stop
see it.
ledging it.
Well, the options with UI is a big challenge. The options with the UI are basically, do you put like a background in and then put the text on top of that, and now you can't see half the game going on?
Yeah.
So,
but it's interesting because would I enjoy Ark as much if the zombies were dinosaurs? Like, I could see a situation where, okay, you're lost on this mysterious island and the dead keep rising.
Yeah.
You could make that compelling. I think it would have to be a very different game.
This is our next big game. Zombie Island.
Because
actually, Dead Island.
Do you have it where it's something like constant flooding? You know, you're constantly going to be clearing it out and pushing it back. That kind of zombie. Do you have it where every time it's nighttime, it's just lethal?
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean? A lot of games, when nighttime comes, the zombies are suddenly faster and more vicious. Okay, you could do it that way. But at that point,
that's the mechanic.
Zombies? Why not just ghosts or monsters or, I don't know, wyverns or griffins or manticores? But if we take a game that you and I have played a lot, let's say Stick Fight.
Yeah.
Would it be better with zombies?
Oh, if you killed a player and they all came back as zombies, and then the only way of killing them was to get a headshot.
I mean, that might be.
Well, that's a game
it
mode
actually came
in
up because
itself,
we were
isn't
talking
it?
about having a level in tactics in battle tactics where there's zombies in the background and you could theoretically have them as a threat, but I don't know that it adds anything. I mean, sure, as opposed to just window dressing for a level, which is fine.
I mean, one of the versions of Last Man Standing is that when you kill another player, they become part of a horde that is against everyone.
You know what modern fast, screamy zombies remind me of more than anything else?
Manic
the Xenomorph from Aliens.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Get that.
The same kind of scream, the same kind of movement, the same kind of, fear in the dark.
Well, with one extra thing with the Xenomorph, you don't know which wall it's on. Right. But yes, the whole very fast, very deadly, will appear out of the shadows.
Which is interesting because the original Alien was a very different movie.
Have you played Alien Isolation?
As Jaws in space. I have not, but I've seen footage of it. It's the kind of game that I'm not playing that.
I want to play it, but probably stream it in VR. And
you want to do the reaction shot thing, don't you?
I think just watching me.
I think you should get some pearls just so you can clutch them.
I don't think that's what that means, but okay.
You're thinking of a different expression.
Am I? I don't know. I tend to make them up. So that's fine. Yeah, Alien Isolation. I got to the point where the alien appears. That's as far as I've gotten. I definitely was scared at points in that game. Not terrified or anything along those lines, but very jumpy, very skittish because the soundscape and the environments are all open and quiet and noises in the distance. And I, so I was staring. I think the first time the alien appears, there is a lift that you've got to get in to within I don't know about I don't know, 30 seconds or so. And I was, as I do, I was gawping at the graphics on the wall and I was trying to work out if that was a real time shadow or whether it was an animated texture. And then I lost my head.
Yep.
It's like, oh, this isn't a look and see game.
But it's interesting because I was just thinking that the Aliens franchise tends to have extraordinary aesthetic attention to detail, whether it's sound or visuals or whatever else. I mean, between the design of the alien, Geiger's whole thing, or the soundscape. Then I realized there have actually been bad games, but that brought me back to the original Alien versus Predator. You play as the humans and you've got this terrifying shooter experience. And I never saw the point of playing as
Do you
humans,
mean
so
the
I
one
didn't.
in about 98, 99 that was 3D, you could shoot the lights out and you could play as Alien, Predator, and Marines? Yeah.
Right. And originally it was going to be like 3 completely separate stories. And then to test them, they just reused the same level. And they realized, why don't we just make this the same story from 3 points of view?
Yeah.
The first time you play as the alien changes that experience so much. You feel so mobile and so powerful, even as a face hugger.
Mm-hmm. You soon
I mean,
realize
the first
how
mission
fragile
is
you are, though.
Find a face and then
Hug
and hug it and keep safe until you're born as a chest burster. Like that is the mission. I love playing as the Predator because there's so much you could do there. And then when you fight the aliens, it's just modern zombie game, right? Fast, screamy.
It's a horde.
But it was fascinating, and that brings us back to games where you could play as a zombie. I know Left 4 Dead has that. Left 4 Dead 2 has that that multiplayer mode where some of you can be zombies. That's fine. But it would be kind of fascinating to make a game where you have that kind of mobility, not in a sort of multiplayer game, but you're really fragile.
Yeah. Now, I definitely, especially if you played online, and I played a lot. It's the first online competition I ever won. Way back. I won 50 quid. It costs about 400 quid in phone bill, but I won 50 quid. It was good. But when you were playing, the thing that with the alien was you could do this thing where if you hold the view up at 45 degrees and jump, you'd do a pounce. But if then you were 45 degrees on the new wall, you would be able to pounce again at twice the speed. Next wall, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times.
You could ricochet.
And you could literally, if you aimed it right in a corner, you could jump across like a 400, 500 meter level, no problem. And I was really good at the time. Like if an alien was doing that, I'd track them with a grenade and go pop. But of course, when you're in the air and you're going on a predictable path, you're an easy target anyway. But you do things like you'd whip past someone and you just go click with your tail as you're going past, whip that tail, and then they would just disintegrate. And the same would happen to you. And it was so fast and frantic. And I don't think I've played a game, and if you guys have as well, I'd be interested to know, played a game where you are so fragile, where one shot can easily take you out. I'm not talking quite like a hedge.
Blade.
Sorry?
Bushido Blade on the SNES back in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I used to play this a lot with my friends, where this was a fighting game based on Bushido, like the samurai code. But the interesting thing was the sword fighting was pretty realistic. If you got hit with a sword, it was almost certainly going to kill you. There was no hit bar. And there were levels you could play against, NPCs and the rest of it. But when you played multiplayer, what tended to happen is you would both stand perfectly still, waiting for the other one to blink. And it was kind of fascinating. Like, it was an entirely different game. You actually felt like a samurai.
Yeah, the walking Fred. I like that. You may have AMC coming after you for that one. But I do like the premise, and I like the idea. It reminds me a bit of is it Plague Inc., where you're a bacteria or a virus and you try and take over the world. because they have no awareness of you at the beginning, and one of the cards you can play is being subtle and slow. But yeah, later on they're hunting you. I think that would make a very interesting game type. Someone feel free to make that. Yeah,
I mean, there is. Shut up. There are characters like that actually in. Oh, I forgot the name of this game. One moment. I'll pull up Steam. We've even played it together.
Oh blimey!
Terraria.
Terraria?
Yeah,
Starbound?
that's it. That's clearly it. No, say random things. Streets of Rogue.
Yes.
Which is actually a fascinating game in its own right. But there is a character in there called the Zombie. And, you know, shopkeepers and most players will either run away from you or attack you on sight. Not players, NPCs.
Yeah.
But if you kill someone, or if any zombie kills someone, they will become a zombie. If you spit on them, or whatever the attack is,
yeah,
and then they die, they become your follower. You'll lose some health, but they'll become your follower. So very quickly, the level is just filled with zombies, which is interesting because there's always a zombie on the level because every character is on the level. But there's another character in there called the Shapeshifter who can hop. He's very small and fragile, and everyone will attack him. But if he stands behind someone, he can hop into their body.
Yeah.
Which is a lot more like The Thing, the John Carpenter movie, where, you know, you've got this shape-shifting alien that can impersonate people.
Wow.
That's a fun little thing.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's once you've got the main game mechanic and a way of
read
winning
it so that people who are watching the recording will know.
What's
Hi,
that?
Jessica. What you've just read.
the subtle track in Plague Inc. is what got me into the okay, I'm done here stage with that game. Yeah, once you've mastered a particular way of playing a game, it's very difficult to replay it and not just use the same tactic again. Because, you know, I mean, my classic one for Plague Inc. is starting somewhere like China or Russia or United States, all for different reasons, population or cold, because those tend to be hard to get.
Yeah.
And then you're as subtle as possible. And I think that's why they ended up adding the other game modes in. Because if you start, I think you start as like a bacteria, and then you've got like 5 other things you can be. And a virus has random mutations, so you can't stay hidden as easy. And I think you have to then start spending your DNA points to stay hidden. But yeah, one of the things I always did was just keep. Yes, I've got replay chat on in the recording.
Yeah, but if we clip it, then we won't see it.
This is true.
One of the things I like about Plague Inc. is it's the opposite, or sort of the mirror of a board game, Pandemic, which is an amazing cooperative board game. Has a few problems with it, notably quarterbacking, which is when one player tells all the others what to do. But what I like about Pandemic is it led to my favorite board game of all time, Pandemic Legacy. And if you've not played Pandemic Legacy, one, play it with the same group of people every week. And 2, play it. And I say the same group of people because Pandemic Legacy isn't like a normal game of Pandemic. Pandemic Legacy is a season. It's actually set up like a TV show. There are now 3 Pandemic Legacies plus Pandemic Legacy 0, which is set with Cold War spies.
I remember playing Pandemic Legacy, and when I came back to the friends to play it again, they had done several missions. I'm like, you know, it's like watching episode 1 and then episode 4, and you're like, what's happened?
Yeah. So what happens is you play a game, and it's a month, and you have objectives to hit. If you hit them, you win. You get less money because you don't need the resources from the world governments to fight these 4 pandemics. Or if you lose, you'll get more money. So it's a nice little balancing thing. You can play each month twice, and then if you don't do it, you just fail it. And you take the fail consequence. But you've got a deck of cards, and you've got a whole bunch of sealed boxes and sealed cards you're not allowed to open. And as you get certain things, it'll say, now turn to the book and open box 1 or peel sticker 3. And you actually make permanent changes to the cards,
I love that.
The board, add new components, add new rules. And by April, you're playing a completely different game.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. And then when you get to the end of the game, it is over. And you might think, but I don't want to play a board game just once. Yeah, but playing a board game 12 to 24 times is probably how many times you play a board game anyway. And the memories you get from that are incredible. I've actually played it all the way through twice with different groups of people. Had to be very careful not to spoil anything.
Of course, but the next playthrough can be completely different.
Oh, it was. It was absolutely different. I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but I will say the first time the game told me, destroy this card, blew my mind.
But you're physically, literally changing the game. It is, you're destroying it as you go forward. You can't replay that game. You'd have to buy it again. But I wouldn't think of that as a game, as a board game. It's more like a board experience that you're going to play once.
And that'd be an interesting thing to try and do with a video game. I don't know that you can actually make that work. I think that's actually something board games have over video games right now.
I was going to say there was an Infinite Runner game that was, I think the game was You Only Have One Life. That was the name of the game. And the only way to play it more than once, i.e. you jump between buildings, I think it was. And if you died, and I was like, huh. And then it went, just shows you your tombstone or something like that in your high score. And the only way of getting it back on your phone to play it again would be to factory reset the phone. Because it obviously stores a setting somewhere to say, you've died. I was like,
yep.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
But yeah, I really recommend Pandemic Legacy. There's this amazing thing that happens around April or March or May, depending on how well you guys are doing. Where you're told to open a certain box, and you open the box, and everyone sees the components in it, and everyone just freaks out. Like, what are those?
So the Mad Tinkerer said the video games already do this: roguelites, vampires, survivors, games.
Okay.
I think there's a difference though when you destroy the board. You're changing the landscape physically.
Yeah, I mean, roguelites will add things, they might remove things, all the rest of it, but they won't say, okay, you've played this 12 times, it's over. You can't play it again. And while that can be seen a weakness of the game, and certainly ecologically insensible, that sense of purpose gives the game real meaning. Like, suddenly, when I was playing a game through with my ex-wife, and we had to make a decision whether or not to nuke the city of Chennai and kill all the people because the infection rate was simply too high and it was going to destroy the world. And in a normal game, that'd be just like a conversation. But here, it had
quick
actual
save.
weight because we couldn't know what the long-term consequences of that would be, but they would be.
Yeah, quite literally. If you imagine playing a game and on your next playthrough, that character was no longer there because you
not just that character. That's roguelikes do that.
Or that building, or that even city.
That level type.
Yep.
No, there are moments in most legacy games where, and the first time you do it's actually kind of a shock. Destroy this card. You're expected to rip it up or burn it. Like, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's gone, eradicated. That would be an interesting sales point to the game. By the way, you could definitely do DLC, new character.
Oh no, I mean, it comes with a bunch of stuff that you add to the game as you go.
Yeah.
But you're also removing stuff. You're putting permanent stickers on the board. Like, once cities get to a certain point of infection, they just stay there and you can't travel there.
Imagine playing Monopoly, but zombie Monopoly, where the houses slowly become quarantined, so you can no longer buy them or use them.
That sounds very 2020.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. So we've been waffling for an hour. Actually, the game did make us our ex-wife. We got on very well at that point. World going crazy made her my ex-wife. I will say one more thing about Pandemic Legacy. Pandemic Legacy had the most visceral reaction to any game I've ever had. And I can't tell you why without massively spoiling the plot, which I love, but I was so mad at a game component, I took a dry erase board and went to the bathroom and wrote rude things about it all over my bathroom walls.
Jan's descent into
I
madness
felt
starts here.
personally betrayed by a game component. And when a game has that kind of effect on you, that's a good design.
It's
not frustrated like, oh, that's so badly done, rah, throw my toys out the pram. But like, you're so emotionally invested, and then you feel betrayed by a decision that this component makes in the plot.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like a real oh, that was good.
But it's part of the storyline. It's not something that... So say you're playing like a 4-player game and an AI is controlling one of the characters and the AI does something stupid and then you lose that character. You're not frustrated in that manner. It's a genuine, like,
you probably even
you've done
see
something.
it coming, to be honest. Like, often when you're playing these games, it's like, yeah, this character's going to betray me. I had that when I was playing the original Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Like, both of these characters are going to betray me. They're just going to be, oh, look, they did. Shock face.
I think they were stereotypes, yes.
There was a lot to like about Watch Dogs, but there was some problems with the writing.
Yes.
I don't want to badmouth the writers. I think they're very talented, but I think the pressures of making the game that big and that successful and that quickly probably didn't help.
Well, it's challenging.
As a movie producer once said, anyone can write a better Hollywood script, but can you write a script that can survive the rewrite process?
Bye. No, it's challenging. Yeah. Whether it's a story or... I mean, that's one of the things with creating a game. Ultimately, you're creating an experience, and often games don't start from something like a story. You'll be exploring a mechanic, and you go, oh, this is a good game mechanic. How can we use it? This is a fun game mechanic. And a game can literally grow from that mechanic standpoint. And then the story is almost a way of prolonging that game experience rather than, changing anything massively. And I know for certain, I mean, we've talked about it before with GTA 5, when you have different... You could tell almost that it's been made at different times by different people. The swimming mechanic makes no sense. It uses completely different controls, and you get in a helicopter and you're flying into walls. And you're like, okay, I've got this. You get into a plane and you're like, whoa, no. And it's like,
do you remember when we did that heist mission, that stealth heist in GTA 5 that they added? And we had to do like diving. And like the controls were completely different to anything else we've done.
Like, how do I dive? I'm pressing that button.
We're trying to get... It was great. We'd done the entire mission, and we'd done it almost exactly the 10-minute level where we get an extra bonus money. And someone noticed us right at the last minute, but it's okay. They haven't woken up the island. All we're going to do is get in the boat. So we jump into the water, and then we get into the boat, and then we press the button to get in, but it hasn't registered, which makes us dive into the water. But now the button to go up is the same button that we had before to go down. So we're diving deeper into the water, go back into the boat, get to the boat, and press the button. That's the wrong button. That's dive.
Mikey, you getting into the boat? Nope, my character does not want to get into the boat. I'm trying.
He's going for a swim.
Did you hear about the news with GTA 5? I think it happened this week or last week. So you can now have private lobbies, finally.
It's only been 15 years.
Right? Okay, I think you get more money for your heists and other missions if you're playing in an open lobby. I do not care.
I don't want to play with the public.
But because you now can join your own private server, the public lobbies are now even worse. Because it's just the toxic people left, and it's like, okay, they've got their playground. Have fun.
Yeah, totally.
But I've reinstalled it now. I want to give it another go. Now I can play online with people without having to try and fudge the game to get into a private lobby.
Play it anymore.
You've been put off
I'm
too
no longer
much.
on Windows. Yeah. However, we have been whittling on about mostly zombies, but not entirely, for like an hour. So, if anyone has any thoughts, concerns, comments, interpretive dances, or now's the time. This reminds me of the song "Zombie Me" by No More Kings.
I don't know that one.
It's amazing. It's a song about...
I've got the Cranberries in my head at the moment. Is it the Cranberries?
But no.
No.
It's No More Kings. The Cranberries is a different song.
Zombie.
Hedgehog. There's an amazing moment in the No More Kings song which goes, all the zombies in the house go, oh. All the zombies in the house go, oh.
Toucans.
Toucans.
I love it.
You
know, you mentioned Doom earlier. A couple of nights ago, I tried the modern Doom.
How'd you enjoy it?
It's a completely different game. I actually read the instructions. So I played not the most recent one, but the one before, and I was struggling with it because I just picked it up and played it like a first-person shooter. That's not the game. That's not the cycle. And I sat down
this time and I read remake what a first-person shooter is, because everyone copied the ideas of Doom, and then everyone copied cover mechanics and regenerating health and all the rest of it.
So one of the things, I actually read the instructions. Fancy that. And it's like, and they're very clear. Like, this is the game loop. If you don't do this, you're not going to have a good time. I'm like, okay. And then you've always got the chainsaw, and the chainsaw turns your enemies into a pinata of health and ammo. You're like, oh, brilliant.
Oh,
I didn't realize the chainsaw
to go
has
in
fuel.
Fast. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, ammo. But the only thing is the ammo only stays on the ground, apart from your permanent pickups that you've got. It only stays on the ground for like 5 seconds. If you don't pick it up, it's all gone. It's like, oh, okay. And I was reading about that you start with the shotgun. No longer do you get a pistol at the beginning. So you start with a shotgun, and one of the first things you could do is make it a fully automatic shotgun. I'm like, that sounds cool, but you can only carry like 24 shells. They deliberately cut things down so it's fast, intense, and you run out of ammo very, very quickly. And I
haven't played it, but I've seen a lot of design analysis in that game. They really wanted to rethink what a first-person shooter is, because it's become so much cover mechanic, regenerate health, which means that the way you play is you hide behind a thing, hop out, shoot a bunch of things, hide behind the thing. You've got all the ammo in the world.
And that's not the player's choice in a way. It's the way the game's designed. Did it start with Halo? Halo had like regenerative health, didn't it? Or if you out for long enough, your health or shields regenerated, one or the other. And that does change the mechanic of the game significantly if you can just gain all your health back by hiding for a few seconds. Because what are you going to do? Hop round a corner.
That was the conversations we had with the Godot 4 RPG project.
Yeah.
Should we have regenerating health? And the answer was no. We'll have health potions.
It makes sense. There's consequences to running out of health. Yeah, overall, I found it very
get
fun.
The behavior of the players that your game encourages. Like that famous thing with the Deus Ex remake. Not Human Revolution, but the one before.
Mankind Divided?
Where players were mad because they spent the entire time going through every single draw. And a game designer was on Reddit going, why'd you do that?
It's like early on, you put a praxis kit in that
drawer.
You
put a praxis kit in the first drawer, so now I have to check all of them.
Yep.
Like, oh, yeah, no, we did do that, didn't we? Like,
I will hold my hand up.
You get the behavior reward.
Divided. That's exactly what I did. I went through every drawer just in case.
You had to. It was insane not to.
Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, Draw Hunter Edition.
Deus Ex, Stationary Divider.
Okay, so the first one's the one that had a bit of controversy over like the DLC that you could download once and you paid for it to use once. And I remember one of the downloads was a sniper rifle. So you could have a sniper rifle. But actually, after you got out the first building, if you climbed on top of, I think it was like a fuel station or service station or convenience store of some description, there was a sniper rifle. So it's like you paid like £1.50, so you can not use a sniper rifle.
They had a lot of controversy with the DLCs.
Yeah.
You should watch the 3.5 hour long video by H. Bomber Guy on Deus Ex.
I have.
Which is fascinating.
I'm not going to watch it again.
Don't watch it in one go.
No.
But it's really fascinating. He goes into exhaustive detail. It's called Deus Ex is Fine.
It's a good game. I haven't played. I've got Human Revolution, but I've not actually played it yet.
It's fine.
Big fan of the original, though. And as they say in there, every time someone mentions Deus Ex in a video, the person watching, or at least one of them, is going to re-download it and play it.
Yep. No, that was an amazing game. So yeah, I think this is a good time to finish.
It is a good time to wrap up. And
need to go make
going to
dinner
thank everybody for
and also
joining
make
us this
muffins.
evening for our
We should do that.
ramble into games. I just noticed that the video itself just says dissecting games. We forgot to put zombies in the title. Must remember to put title. Oh
It
well.
worked. Let us know if you prefer this kind of format compared
Yep.
to us playing a thing and just waffling over that. I think there's a lot to be gained from just like picking a theme or a mechanic or a genre. But you know, whatever you guys find more
Exploring it.
interesting.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening.
And thank you everyone for joining us this evening.
That's what I said. I can't press it like that. Right.
Press it.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Ow. Bye. God, I'm getting old.